We're ready. Council is not going to last tonight. We're going to call this meeting to order. This is a charter workshop for Corporation Council, Mayor and Council to discuss roles and responsibilities of the council and the mayor. I'll take a motion to open the meeting. Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Pop. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're not open. The whole goal is to certainly clarify everybody's roles and responsibilities as council and mayor. I'll hand it over to Corporation Council Schmeller to lead the conversation, assuming that this is more of a dialogue than a presentation. Councilor Moore is here online. Obviously can hear us. We can see you. Good to see you, Jeff. But I'll just hand it over to Steve.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So, as the mayor noted, this is a workshop. This is not intended to be a presentation. I do have some sections of the charter highlighted that I want to just make sure we touch on, but very much I want this to be as informal as possible. Interrupt me, ask questions. Let's just try to look at the charter because that's the guiding document, but B, hash out what we can and try to find, if there is any gray area or uncertainty, try to figure it out and answer those questions. I don't want to read things that you guys can read yourselves, so I'm going to be referencing the charter. If you don't have it in front of you, you can pull it up on your phone through the E-code format. It's pretty easy to navigate. And we can, certainly just write down the first as opposed to trying to copy everything down that we're saying. Again, interrupt, ask questions. We'll have a dialogue. As Councilor Capelli noted, there may be a quiz at the end, so we all want to stay as engaged as possible.
Everybody cheat off my.
So to start, just to hit kind of the high level, we have a strong mayor system of government in the city of Plattsburgh. You may recall several years ago, there was a charter commission, which resulted in a more modernized charter. But around that same time, there was also a proposition put to the voters of the city, whether or not we wanted to have a city manager form of government. And in that form of government, the mayor's role is largely ceremonial, and the city manager runs the city. The residents of Plattsburgh rejected that concept. We retained a strong mayor system. In this, the mayor participates and is a member of the common council, but basically or explicitly is the chief executive officer or the manager of the city. The mayor runs the city, the day-to-day operations. The council in a strong mayor system has a lot of power, no doubt, but its power is more relegated to budget issues and legislation. Basically, if I could simplify it, the mayor runs the city, the council guides the city. Now, just like we have a federal constitution or New York State Constitution, we have a city charter. This is a helpful document, but it's not a perfect document. It does not answer all questions. It doesn't, there is no frequently answered questions or kind of guidance. It's a smaller version of our state federal constitution. So it's an informal document. And in my role as city attorney, I represent the city of Plattsburgh as a whole. So my goal is to represent the best interests of the city, but also as a practical matter, that means I represent the mayor, the council, councilors, department heads, and that's it as far as I know, and the relevant boards within the city. So it's important to recognize, or not important to recognize, I have recognized that sometimes that will come to a head because there could be potential conflict between a councilor and the mayor, or the council and the mayor, or the department heads or relevant boards. So in those situations, we'll navigate them as we go, but my interests are, to the best of my ability, to represent the city as a whole. All right, so with that, any questions before we jump into it?
I do have a question.
Sure. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
As it pertains to the way that you explained, our way of governing. You explained this to me before, so I'm gonna ask you to, clarify that you have explicitly stated to me that we are a co-equal branch of government. Not true? I mean, in the sense that we can write local laws, the mayor can write local laws. We write resolutions, the mayor writes
Yeah, I mean, when we say
resolutions.
co-equal, I mean, that gets into the, kind of the checks and balances of the federal system. We don't have a judiciary, a judicial branch, so I may use that term loosely. I don't remember exactly the content, but I guess my point would be, and we're gonna get into that later, it is a strong mayor system of government, but as a whole, the council can, as a body, the council can take certain actions that can overrule what a mayor could do. For example, the mayor, and we're going to get to this, the mayor could veto a resolution. So the council as a body could adopt a resolution. The mayor has a veto power under our charter, which he could then veto that resolution. But then if certain processes are followed, the council could then overrule that decision.
Yeah, the
So-
council can reintroduce a resolution and vote on it again.
Yeah, and it just requires, a majority of before vote, or council vote at the time would overrule the mayor's veto. So co-equal, loose, as an analogy, sure. Council as a body is a powerful body.
So, and I think one of the important distinctions here is that we have the ability to write policy, procedure, we pass resolutions, we write local laws. We don't explicitly direct department heads, that's exclusively a mayor role.
Yes.
However, when we write resolutions or local laws, we are directing the mayor and the city managers to execute the will of whatever that legislative or policy or so forth, which brings me back to that idea that we are co-equal in that regard. I can't direct a department head, but we can certainly write local laws and procedures that do that very thing.
Yeah, I mean, the direction of we're gonna get into
Yeah,
that
okay,
more.
I just wanted to bring that up.
Okay.
I
Sure.
understand.
Okay.
Dean, I have a question.
Yeah.
We always refer to the strong mayor. Where in the charter does it say that?
It doesn't, that's just NICOM, they're, people who study municipal governments, they'll characterize types of cities. So our city where a mayor runs the day-to-day, it's basically a ceremonial mayor who, lack of a better term, cuts ribbons and, goes to events versus a mayor who's the chief executive officer of a city who can appoint or terminate employees, creates a budget, does the day-to-day kind of operation of the city.
So there's no reference
In the charter, it doesn't reference it. No,
to the
there's
term
again, there's
mayor.
only so many categories or types of city governments.
Uh-huh.
And, for, I can't quote the author, but there's people who study this have just described that type of city versus other types of cities.
I went to all the trouble to look up the charter and read it over the weekend, and I would appreciate it if you could refer us to specific sections of the charter.
Yeah, and that was my intention to do. So I
Okay.
cherry picked out sections that I thought were relevant to this conversation. I'm not
Okay.
gonna, again, quote the charter verbatim here, it's a waste of time. I'm gonna highlight those sections and summarize them and then certainly cite them for you because it's easy to cite the charter. There's only so many sections and chapters on it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so first, I think it's gonna be important and this will come up, just again, don't need to even write this one down. But section C18 of the definitions, it describes the common council. We think of the common council, many people think of the common council as you guys as counselors, but under our charter, the common council is the legislative body and the mayor. So basically the mayor is a member of the common council. And I'm gonna use the word council specific to the body. When I say council, I do not mean counselor. Because to go to Councilor Gibbs' point, the council as a body, as majority ruled body, does have strong power. Individual councilors do not have nearly as much power as the council as a whole or the mayor as an individual. Okay. All right. So next, we'll turn to Article 3. That describes the common council as a body. C3.1 just repeats the point that I just said, that the common council includes the mayor and then one of every 6 councilors. The mayor, just for, as we all know and recognize during meetings, is the presiding officer during any meeting and cannot vote except for certain circumstances, basically to break the tie. So the mayor can run the meeting, participate in the meeting and have discussions, but explicitly cannot vote unless his vote is necessary. C3.7 I highlighted. That section describes that the council determines its own rules. So every year, at the beginning of the year, we'll adopt organizational rules. That's where we get our Rule 4 and our various rules about decorum and public participation. Those are modified, in my experience, I've been here through several councils and 3 mayors now. Each mayor has a different style. Hopefully there's buy-in from the council, which in each case there has been because the council eventually adopts those council rules. But we get into kind of different nuances as far as committee structures, how many meetings we have per week, the time of meetings, things like that are a little bit more fluid. But it is important to note that the council itself does establish those rules annually.
Okay, so you're saying under C3.7, council determines its own rules.
Yes.
I don't know how I want to ask this question. The organizational structure of committees, for example, does that fall under C3.7?
Yes. Yeah.
Because
That's
it
not
has-
so that there's no charter provision about committee structure. That's a style. Colin kind of brought that up a couple years ago with Chris. We modified it pretty significantly, but that committee idea was a mayoral concept of how they would like to operate the city, blessed by the council. Blessed meaning, I shouldn't use that word, approved by the council annually during its organizational.
during the organizational meeting.
Yeah.
If council did not like the way that, I'm just going to use this as a for instance. When we vote on city council meetings and it's just the title of the resolution and not the resolution. Is that something that the council would determine how it's done? Does that fall underneath this rule?
Conceivably, yes. But because there should be some give and take because it's the mayor's style, there should be some deference, I guess, just because they're more engaged and
But that's not what this
Agreed.
says.
I'm saying there's generally is some deference, but if the council were to say, no, these are rules and we're very specific about it, yes, those rules would control over any preference or stylistic changes. But again, that's a council as a body, not as a councilor couldn't do it, the council as a body could. And again, the mayor is a member of the council.
Okay.
And one point we know, 4 members of the council constitute a quorum. So that's relevant for some open meetings laws issues. All right, so C3.8 is really the meat and potatoes of this discussion. That's sets forth the powers and duties of the council. So there's A through J, so there's a fair amount of powers and duties of the council. My intention is to walk through each one and hopefully have a brief, or not so brief discussion on each of the various powers and duties. All right, so to start, we all know this one, A, C3.8, C3.8A. The common council can enact, amend, or rescind local laws, ordinances, and resolutions. Pretty straightforward. We all know what local laws are. That's what change city code or some other very specific and permanent action by the council requires its specific process under the general municipal law, public hearing. We've been through it, maybe half a dozen to a dozen times per year. We'll go through local law. Ordinances are rarely used in the city. sometimes the word law and ordinance will be used interchangeably, but an ordinance is to me, just to give an analogy, it's between a local law and a resolution. Generally has a more one-off nature, somewhat less permanent. The only time I can think of in my recollection that we used an ordinance was, I can't even remember the specific example, but it was once or twice in my 8 years because our city code said in order to do the specific inaction, an ordinance required of something about a tax foreclosure reimbursement situation. So generally ordinances are not used, there's still some notice requirements, they're just rarely used within the city.
Did we use that term when we, the noise ordinance to deal with the Bitcoin noise? Was that
So
an
people,
ordinance?
that was a local law. Again,
That was
that
a local
word
law?
is used interchangeably. There's only one or two formal that maybe you remember specifically, but it was only once or twice in my time that we actually specifically did ordinance. Yeah.
Okay.
And then a resolution is way more common use. It's typically a more there can be some resolutions that have a longer application, but they're typically shorter period, kind of one-off topics that are designed to deal with a specific issue, not a broad reaching issue. All right, any questions or anything on ordinances or local laws or resolutions? B is talking about a council guides the city. So section B describes how a council has the power to either establish, alter, consolidate, or abolish city departments. That was a very hot topic about 4 years ago when the city went through a major reorganization, abolished or consolidated several departments. That was a council-driven action to the extent the council had to approve it. We had some very contested emotional meetings, tight council votes, and most, if not all, of those resolutions were adopted, abolishing certain city departments and consolidating other city departments. Even though the council has that power, there are some checks within this charter that prevents the council from getting rid of all services. We still have to be a city, we still have to make sure the lights are on and the streets are paved. But in some circumstances, the city can farm out that city service to a private entity so long as it's, or another governmental entity, so long as that service is guaranteed. If no questions, section C, it describes how the council shall confirm mayoral appointments, basically higher level city officials, so city officers, department heads, and assistant department heads. So that means the mayor can nominate and appoint an individual if it's going to be a higher up managerial position, and then the council has to approve that appointment. Now note, this does not include all employees of the city, but if we just skip down, and we'll discuss this in a minute, there's additional power of the council which establishes the salary schedules, and fringe benefits of all officers and employees of the city. So in some regard, the council, explicitly, the council will have to approve higher level managers and city officers, and it's sometimes less specific ways will also have to approve employee hires to the extent you have to approve the salaries for those individuals. So I don't want to confuse that right now. I just wanted to make that point that the council approves higher level managers. Again, and that's 3 votes plus the mayor. Well, 3 votes because assumedly the mayor has nominated that person, and therefore that's assumed a yes vote.
Wait, that's not what this says, though. I mean, you
By
can't,
3 affirmative votes.
it just says 3 affirm.
Well, because every other council resolution requires 4 council votes, so that's 3 councilors, or 3 councilors plus the mayor, or 4 councilors would need to approve a resolution. In this case, it says the council confirms the mayoral appointment by 3 affirmative votes because the mayor has made that nomination. The mayor wouldn't have appointed someone or nominated someone unless they supported that person.
So I guess I'm confused about what you're
Oh.
trying to clarify.
He'd
then.
be the automatic tiebreaker if there were a tie.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's what you're saying.
That's what I'm
He could be,
saying, yeah.
okay, okay. Okay.
D talks about how the council as a body can overrule can enact legislation over the disapproval of the mayor. That's legislation, so that would be typically a local law, and there's a process built into the municipal home or the general municipal law as to how that would occur. It's similar to the process where the council would overrule a mayor's veto of a resolution. Basically gets represented, and then with at least 4 votes, they can overrule that. In my experience, that's never happened for a local law where mayors disapprove or veto a local law.
Yeah.
It does a resolution. Yeah, it's for the local law. Okay, very importantly, and that's what you guys are dealing with right now, section E describes how the council shall adopt the annual budget and appropriate money and levy taxes. There's other sections in the charter which I did not pull out, which you guys are pretty much familiar with. The mayor proposes a budget and has to hand it over to you with a budget message by early October. And then once he does that, it's in the council's hands to either approve the budget, make amendments to the budget, or if no action is taken by the second week, I believe, of January, it's deemed approved. So council has the power of the purse. You guys control the next year's budget. Budgets are not perfect. There's other sections in the charter to say how do you amend the budget after adoption. But it's you know, as Rich will tell us all, there's certain accounting principles and there's certain things that are required to be in the budget, but the council does have a lot of power and discretion in forming its budget and can also make certain policy decisions through its power of the purse. Any questions about the budgets, not the process, but just the power of budgeting? Okay. F, council is required to provide for an annual independent audit. That's something that Rich generally handles, and we'll have a third party come in and audit our books to make sure we're following these generally accepted accounting principles. G, again, talking about the council's role as guiding the city. The council's role is to prepare a 5-year plan to guide the growth and development of the city. And that's supposed to include any projections regarding revenue and expenditures, goals, desirable public projects, basically big picture, big ticket items. H, again,
Is there any, like, there was a question early on in this year, I know Councilor Kelly handed over the budget for this 5-year plan early on in the year, and then Councilor Gibbs took it over after that.
No, I didn't take it over. No, you and I had caught up on that. The information that I was supposed to receive from Richard, I never got until August. So it didn't get, this 5-year plan didn't get done. And Jeff and Mike have been working on it and I worked with them. So I didn't take it up because I didn't have what I needed. And then I sent out a request for a lengthy number of items and documents, and we didn't get that till August. So just to clarify.
so if we haven't done it yet this year, we technically should have done it by June 1st. Again, it's a 5-year plan, so it's not as pressing. I'll say I don't want to minimize it, but it's not as pressing as an annual budget. So I think we should try to pick that ball up again from the council's end and try to get that together. We do have some good templates. I know, I'm not going back to spreadsheets, but we have some good Excel documents where it shouldn't be too difficult to kind of put in the last year's budget numbers, our current numbers, and then push it forward again. I guess the point with that though is that's also it's not just bar graphs on a page, but you're really supposed to include desirable public projects and programs, things that you want to see as long-term goals for the city. So we should pick that up again. There's some urgency here. I mean, to me, the annual budget's more pressing, but still we shouldn't be out of compliance with our charter.
I agree.
And to clarify, me and Richard had a conversation in a meeting regarding this 5-year plan that Mike Kelly, Councilor Kelly, had handed over. Whoever he handed over to, I don't think that's not my argument. It's not the point of this. My question is the mayor involved in the development of this 5-year plan, or is it just the councilors that are developing this 5-year plan?
So as a member of the council, would be the mayor and the council.
It can definitely be a team effort and probably should be. Mayor's, prior, Mayor Reed, as far as I know, didn't do this. It just didn't get done.
Sorry, did or did not?
Did not.
Gotcha.
And Mayor Reed, I guess, spotted this in the charter and said, gee, that's a good idea. We ought to do it.
I think you said mayor, you meant Mayor Collins.
Sorry, Dan.
Did you just say Mayor Reed twice?
Yes, I guess so.
I
May
know, I
have.
understood what you said there.
Well, Mayor Reed suggested that we do this, so we started doing it. It turned out to be a good idea because we were able to hit our 5-year plan projections pretty much on the money every year that he was in office. So I think we could have similar success under Mayor Rosenquist if we in fact perform that exercise every year. And it's not too late this year. We should go ahead and do one for 2021. Well, actually, it would be for 2022, but, and beyond, since it's a 5-year plan. But Councilor Moore and I, and also Councilor Gibbs to a lesser extent, worked on this extensively over the past couple months. We were given the document we needed from Chamberlain Marks. But the latest I heard was that he's now saying that these weren't his numbers, even though he gave it to us in August. So we're a little confused about what we should do with what we have. You know, what we did in the past was very successful, and there's no reason it can't be successful going forward.
So, I mean, like, it's a good clarification, Councilor Kelly, because my impression when it was handed off was that this is a council thing that doesn't include the mayor. So it's a good clarification that this does, and it should, and I agree, it should be a team effort, because there's one thing to have a 5-year guiding document done by council versus a 5-year guiding document that's done as a team effort between the executive and the city. So,
Well, that's how it was done when Mayor Reed was mayor. He was very much a part of it, and he always had some good suggestions for us. Together, we developed a good template for it, and I just, you know, for lack of a better template, I just like to see us keep doing this.
yeah.
Yeah, me
It
too.
has been very successful. We anticipated a $500,000 surplus over 3 years, and lo and behold, we were able to achieve it.
So that's actually a good point. So if there was I don't want to use the wrong word, but if there was a perceived roadblock from a department head as a counselor, we're going to get to that, you would be prohibited from saying, you know, department head, John Doe, do this work tomorrow. Whereas by relaying that to the mayor now as a member of the council, you can say, hey, this is where our roadblock is. We can't direct this department head. Let's can you kind of help us grease these wheels and get this moving.
As I understand it, and I wasn't in that meeting, but there was a meeting between Councilor Moore and the mayor and Chamberlain Marks. And at that meeting, it was stated that the numbers we had were no good. So we've done a lot of work on it, but, you know, we've heard the numbers are no good. So, you know, we need buy-in, I guess, in order to accomplish it. We need the Chamberlain's buy-in, we need the mayor's buy-in,
Yeah, well,
Need
and of
access.
course, we need the council's buy-in.
well, just to clarify this, okay, one, you have access. The other thing is you have buy-in, right? With my clarification was when it was handed to me, it seemed like this was a counselor, not a mayor thing. So now that's clarified, I think it's certainly beneficial for us to sit down and get that worked out.
I do too.
Yeah.
I'd like to do it.
I don't think anybody, I don't think Chamberlain Marks or myself are sitting here saying, no, well, I don't think this is something we should do. It's not my position. And I think that's a message that I also sent to the group when there was a question about exchanging this information, that I would like to be involved in it. And I think that's crucial for my office to be involved. But again, just a clarification is that I wasn't clear on the minutes.
Okay, well, mayor can have, if he or she chooses, a really strong role in that. And I think they probably should, especially the strategic parts of it. We've never done a very good job. I mean, we put together a really, really nice financial projection for 5 years, but we've never really done a strategic 5-year plan, and we probably should. And many counselors over the years have suggested that we do. I recall Councilor Armstrong being one of those who was a strong proponent of a strategic plan. And I think we should take up that banner also and figure out what we want our city to look like in 5 years.
If I recall, at the time Councilor Armstrong was putting that together, one of the conclusions was the city's finances are in such disarray that we can't do strategic planning until we break the ship, and then you can take those steps.
And that is correct.
And maybe we are in that position now that we can now do the SWOT analysis, whatever acronym we want to use.
As of today, I would say we're in a place where we could do that.
Well, the 5-year plan, it looks, according to this, if I'm reading this and I'm looking, well, what is included in that 5-year plan? It's not, it is the projections, the trends and projections, but it's also goals and plans for improving efficiency. So it's not just the numbers of it, but it does look like it's a more holistic, strategic initiative that we're gonna look at and say, hey, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna try to accomplish in the next 5 years? They may change, but it's a guiding document for the council and the mayor and city to look at in partnership with the department heads and say, hey, this is where we're trying to get in 5 years.
And that
These are the financial
might be
impacts.
the attack on this kind of the governing by spreadsheet that was from the prior administration, where it was so focused on the numbers and it may have been missing that component of the other parts of that sentence, goals and planning, desirable public projects and programs, and other things to not just strictly budget issues, but also what do we want to see here?
But
When is our-
don't forget what you said earlier about we weren't in any financial shape to really be doing a
Exactly. You were
strategic
trying to-
plan
Yeah, keep the.
a few years back. We are now. And
When is our next finance and community development meeting? Is that November 10th? Meeting schedule.
The 11th of November.
No, that's a federal holiday.
Oh, sorry, yes, the 10th of November. Sorry, I didn't, it hasn't been.
Do we want to make the 10th of November? Because that'll be after the mayor's budget, after the budget hearing, which is happening this
Oh,
week.
it is, sorry.
Do we want to make that our goal we'll all be here as a collective governing body with the mayor and with city chamberlain.
that would suit me just fine.
What does the council think? Make that our goal for the 10th of November to finalize the 5-year plan?
At
You
least-
and
at
you and
least-
Jeff have pretty much,
Well, you're also talking about 2 weeks from now. So just to clarify what work can be done within 2 weeks. I mean, we can do as much as we can. I don't want to say it's not possible to get that done in 2 weeks, but that's 2 weeks for us to get 4 or 5 people on the ground.
Jeff's raising his hand.
4%.
Go
Yeah,
ahead, Jeff.
Well, I just wanted to state that we're quite far along in this. The numbers that we're working with is inflation and revenues, and they're pretty constant. So, and we've been working on this. I just want to say that it would be very doable in 2 weeks. Mike and I and yourself have been working on this. We're pretty much good to go on this. Just saying.
from a financial perspective. So
Not the strategic part.
Right.
Okay, I think we should probably just let the strategic part go this year. And take it up next year in earnest and do a fantastic job with it going forward.
I mean, from my perspective, you're all, may not have known, but you're doing that already with, some of those beach improvement studies. That would, to me, would be part of a 5-year plan.
Sure, sure.
Because-
All those are inputs, I guess you could say.
All right, so let's get back to this discussion. Section H, pretty straightforward. The council has the power to authorize the mayor or any other designated city official, chamberlain, myself, to enter into contracts and execute deeds. So anytime we have an agreement, a contract, real property conveyance, those always come to the council to act by resolution. I is not often used, but it is a potentially strong power of the council. So I described how the council as a body can make investigations into the affairs of the city or in conduct of any city department, office, or agency. And for that purpose may, subpoena witnesses, take testimony, basically have a hearing. And any refusal to follow any lawful order in the scope of that investigation could result in criminal conviction.
So,
But that's important because that came up in prior administrations where individual councilors were attempting to make investigations. And the analysis back then, and it's still holds true today, is that it's the council as a body can do that, not an individual councilor.
but where does it say that? Does it, I mean,
Because because with this whole section is about common council powers and duties, and again, the common council is a body. There's other language throughout which talks about individual councilors. That's its own term, whereas the council is the body itself. So to me, a councilor could not say, we demand this investigation, but a councilor could say, hey, council, we can't do our work unless we have the information. We have, a motion or resolution. Do you other councilors support the need for this investigation? And if the majority did, that would be a binding process.
so I see this as a lot of layers here. Council has the authority to make investigations into the affairs of the city and the conduct of any city department, office, or agency. They have that ability.
Yes.
And for this purpose, may subpoena witnesses.
Yep.
It doesn't have to rise to the level of an official hearing
Yep.
to subpoena witnesses, take testimony, oaths, and so forth, which then triggers that last component of section I, which is failure or refusal to obey a lawful order. So
And just to cut you off real quickly, there's going to be a relevant section in the mayor's powers and duties. So it's powers, but it's also duties. And in that section, the mayor is obligated to make such other reports as the council may require. So if you wanted to not to, an investigation under that section to me is like a hearing where you're gonna,
under section I,
and that's how I would envision it, because there's other powers of the council to demand reports or demand information, not rising to the level of investigation.
but to make an investigation doesn't necessarily, the word investigation does not explicitly have to mean investigation, like criminal investigation, that kind of thing. To make investigations into affairs of the city and conduct of city department, office, or agency. So to make investigations is inquiries. And may subpoena, I mean, I get that part. That's pretty clear. I don't think anybody would argue about that, where it could rise to that level where we have a public hearing. Although it's not clear to me how that would be done. Would that have to be
So
by,
we did, I don't want to
well, it doesn't give a
open up skeletons,
procedure.
but we had that issue with the CBA, with their retention of special counsel. That was, I believe, the section that was used by this body to investigate that issue.
And it was done by
By
majority
council
vote.
resolution.
It was a majority vote by
Yeah, so that was
resolution.
investigated because there was an incident that occurred and they were trying to
Yep.
get to the bottom of that. Whereas, as I said a second ago, there's other powers not in this Article 3, but Article 4, where the mayor is obligated to make reports as the council shall require. So an investigation is, to me, it's something, something happened that needs to be reviewed and.
Yeah, but it doesn't really say it that way, to make an
Well,
investigation.
No, it doesn't say that, but I'm saying there's other sections which, if you need information to do your job, like you don't have certain data, and you're trying to put the budget together, that wouldn't be an investigation. That would say, hey, we need this report, we need this documentation, which is in another section of the chart. There's somewhere in between needing information and that full-blown investigation.
Investigation seems like a really formal word for this.
Well, that, we can argue all day about what the word means. I'm not here to necessarily interpret everything. What does it mean? To make an investigation is to make inquiries into something. So the first part of this says investigation, inquiry. And I had a long conversation with a member of the last charter commission. And because last year I couldn't get access to information that I was looking for around budget time. And he reached out to me and he was really specific to me. He said, counselors can make investigations, make inquiries. That's what he was explicit to me about that. So it says to make investigations. So whether we want to try and argue, its various connotations, an investigation is an inquiry. Then it can trigger to a criminal level, criminal investigator, whatever, more formal by subpoena witnesses. And then if you don't come, there's failure to refuse or obey a lawful order issued, we have now read that. First part of this, it seems very clear to me that we have the right to make inquiries. So I just want to make that statement. To me, that seems very clear. We have the right to make inquiries.
Well, Counselor Gibbs, just for my education, you are using the words investigations and inquiries interchangeable. Yeah, are they, in your mind, are they?
Well, I'm going to look it up in the Merriam-Webster right
No,
now.
that's not-
No, I'm not being sarcastic.
That's not necessary.
No, I'm not being
If
sarcastic.
you go to section C39B,
No, I don't, yeah.
if you go to section C39B, they actually use those two words, inquiries and investigations, as two separate,
Oh, yeah.
two separate terms.
Oh, thank
I'll wait until we get farther down, because it does go back and reference section I, so go ahead.
Okay, all right, any event, J, final power and duty of the council is to establish salary schedules and benefits of basically anyone, not any independent contractor, but anyone that's an employee of the city. So that's either through, for union members, that's by authorizing and approving a collective bargaining agreement, or for managers, that's by adopting a manager comp resolution, or some other package for managers. Now that doesn't have to be an annual situation. By adopting collective bargaining agreements, those can be forward-looking and can cover several years in the future. Similarly, manager comp packages can be in place unless and until they're superseded by an additional or a new manager package. Or it can be done through the annual budget process. Okay, if nothing else, C39 is a section on prohibitions, and this is designed to prevent interference with the administration. So first, C39A talks about how neither the Common Council as a body or any of its individual members shall in any way demand that the mayor makes an appointment or removes an employee, but they can express their views and freely discuss with the mayor regarding such appointment or removal of employees. So I think that's designed to keep the mayor's role as appointing officer sacrosanct.
Does that, I mean, like explicitly, does that mean council can't say, I want this person fired? And if they say that, like if they express that, because it does say that they can freely express or may express their views and really discuss that with the mayor. But what does that mean explicitly in terms of a counselor telling somebody, I want this person fired? So I mean, like they're directing like legal counsel to fire that person, or?
Yeah, I mean, it says, so the council can't, or its members can't control or demand that statement, but then it later goes on that they can freely discuss with the mayor pertaining to that appointment. So it sounds like they could force it, but they could discuss it with them freely. So when you say
With the mayor,
yeah.
but they can't, like, it's not clear, it's not clear. They can have the conversation
With the
about,
mayor.
I don't like
Yeah.
how this person is doing their job, and I'd like to have them fired, versus they're the ones telling the legal counsel, fire this person.
Yeah, they could not do that. And obviously, any of these discussions would be hopefully be in an executive session or some private setting. But yeah, it's again, we don't have a perfect document, but that seems to be where the line would go. Okay, C39B talks about interference with administration. So in this section, it does parse out inquiries and investigations, except for the purposes of inquiries, comma, and investigations under that section we just read. Individual council members shall deal with the city officers and employees who are subject to the mayor or to the direction and supervision of the mayor, solely for the mayor, and individual council members shall not give orders to any such officer, employee, publicly or privately. This is, again, not a perfect document, but this specific section is often cited by, counselors, council, the mayor. It's kind of a hot topic.
Yeah, because I just wanted to comment on that, like, to me, when I read that, so before we were saying that to make investigations and to be fair, we were saying that that had to be kind of the council as a whole. But here, it kind of implies differently, because it says, except for the purpose of increase in investigations, individual council members shall deal with city officers and employees. So that except there does imply that for the purpose of increase in investigations, individual council members can deal with city officers.
Yeah, so during an investigation and
So
or a
individual-
formal investigation and inquiry, which I guess would make sense because that's now that investigation would be a thing. We are forming an investigation and we're pursuing
Or the inquiry.
this target.
Well, no, I disagree with that. Because, I mean, to explicitly look for the definition of investigation, it says to observe or study by close examination and systematic inquiry. Also, as a verb, to conduct an official inquiry. So if, to Caitlin's point, exactly, except for the purpose of inquiry and investigation, that conjunction means either or, okay, inquiries and investigations under C3A, what we were just discussing, individual council members shall deal with. So individual council seems to be under the umbrella based on this language of council. And not for purposes of a hearing, because it goes on from there, may subpoena, but doesn't have to. I mean, this is, but I'll add to that, to me, the way the language reads, individual council members shall deal with city officers and employees who are subject to direction and supervision of the mayor solely through the mayor. It does not say, unless it says farther down in the charter, Dean, that I don't know about, it does not say the mayor can refuse council or councilor request or access to a department head. It does not say that at all.
That's to me, that's implied by saying solely through the mayor, which
No, it says you're dealing with the officer and employee subject to direction, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Through the, so if I send an email, if anybody sends an email
Yeah.
to the mayor and a particular department head with an inquiry or a request, it does not say to me anywhere in here that the mayor has the authority to refuse that
because that
request.
would, that would say, that would be a meaningless provision if that was the interpretation. Because if that was the interpretation, it would say individual council members shall only deal with city employees by providing notice to the mayor that they're dealing with that employee or officer. It doesn't say that, it says solely through the mayor.
Right, so you go through the mayor.
So if you're through someone, then that person would have discretion to either allow or disallow. And the point being,
That's not what that says, though.
but that's what it does say. And the point is that the mayor has to manage the city. So if the mayor has we have a water main burst down the street and we know that the department heads are working on that, that emergency. That's where the mayor or CEO needs to designate them to spend the time, as opposed to having conflicting bosses asking them to now create some report on a budget issue, whereas they need to spend time doing the emergency department. And I believe that to me has always been the intention, to respect the CEO type role of the mayor's office. And again, if it wanted to say, shall just provide the mayor with notice of their intention, then it would have said that. It doesn't say that. It says solely through the mayor.
Yes, but it
The
doesn't,
first part of the sentence.
but it doesn't say that the access can be.
But that provision would be meaningless if the mayor had to blindly say, you ask, you get it, then there's no, that provision is meaningless.
Well, then I guess part of the big question here is down to kind of how we're defining inquiries. Because if an inquiry, is different than an investigation, so an investigation is a series of inquiries or a formal inquiry, and that would suggest that inquiries themselves are something more just like a question. So then that does imply here at the beginning of the sentence that in the case of inquiries, council members can ask questions. That's what this sentence seems to imply. Because it says, except for the purpose of inquiries and investigations. I don't like
Says-
that's semantics, but that's just,
Exactly.
we're really parsing out the language of the chart. That's what it seems to be reading it here, talking about it.
So but then we go on to the end of the sentence. Individual council members shall not give orders to any such
Yes.
officer or employee. So what is,
Right, a question is different than orders, though. Like an inquiry, so that's the difference between an inquiry and an order. We can't say you have to do this, but we can ask a question.
Yes.
is the impression I'm getting from this.
Yeah.
I can't call Mike, I can't call Mike Bissett and
what's-
say, put the Cogan Avenue project on the top of the list. That's a, no, that's a
No,
direct.
but if the question is, I need to see this budget report, that's not just an answer, that's now that employee needs to go back, create a work product and then deliver that product. That's a direction.
Because it's all in how you
No,
ask
it's
it,
an
really.
inquiry. It's an inquiry.
Would
except
you
for
be
the
Well, I mean, I guess
able
it's
to
something
give
you
me
give
the
them saying, can you provide this information?
Yeah,
And then however they choose to provide that information is kind of, I mean, isn't that part of their work though, is to provide that information to us if we ask for it?
Especially since we need information to be able to write local laws, craft budget, determine policy, ordinances. I mean, those are all things that council action needs access and information to. So I think it's really clear to me that we cannot direct, because it says there specifically and explicitly can't direct. It's so directing a department head is more like what I just said, like I can't call Superintendent Bissett and say, I would really like you to put the Cogan Avenue project on the top of the paving list, or I would really like you to do this. That's a direction that is outside of the purview of this document. But if I send an email to the mayor and include a department head on there and say, can I have the following information? I am requesting a meeting. That's not a direction. That is a question. That is a
But then we
request.
get back to the middle of that sentence. Any individual council member shall deal with employees solely through the mayor.
That is.
Right, but
true.
But then read the first
Not-
part
not-
again.
Not by copying the mayor, it's through the mayor.
Well,
That's
except
it.
for the purpose of inquiries.
And
and
an inquiry
invest-
investigation is a formal council action that's,
But it doesn't, it's because it says individual council members, like it specifically says here, individual council members, so that's what they're referring to when they say accept. Because I looked back and I, because I was trying to figure out when we said here that this is referring to things, actions of the council as a whole, so I looked back at the definition, council, officer, all that. But I mean, here the language is really clear to me. Individual, because we could just flip the sentence then, let's say it like this. Individual council members should deal with city officers and employees who are subject to directions of the mayor, solely through the mayor, except for the purposes of inquiries and investigations. So I guess it would.
so I'm saying there has to be an investigation started before individual council members can take.
But the inquiry,
No.
the inquiry is just a question.
Except, why would we
So-
have that except language? It's.
I mean, because
So
it's
that, so
for the
that
purpose
council
of
can have
inquiry.
access.
I think inquiry is pretty clearly, but I guess that what I'm saying is that we need to define what inquiry means and how we make inquiries. Which is fine if that's something that we need to define, but I'm just saying, I think to me that that is there. And I mean, like I said, I'm not here to be difficult. I didn't come here with this argument, but that seems very clear to me. Because it specifically says individual council members shall deal, et cetera, except for the purposes of this. Which then says that in the purposes of this, individual council members can deal with city officers.
No, it does not mean, I
You
just.
can make
How,
investigations. and-
how? Like,
Because it said, just reading the plain language of it.
I am reading the plain language of it.
But as a whole sentence, you can't just read.
No, I'm not, I'm reading the entirety of the whole sentence, but it starts with, except for the purposes of inquiries and
Okay,
investigations.
So let's try to, I'll try to rephrase the sentence without as much. So individual, well, we'll start from the middle, like we just said, individual council members shall deal with city officers and employees who are subject to the direct control of the mayor, solely for the mayor. Unless, we'll say, unless there's an active investigation or report.
But that's not
Except,
what
no,
it
it says,
says.
except for the purpose of inquiries.
So I'm trying to rephrase it the same way. It's saying,
Folks,
No,
can we
what it
just,
says.
hold on. Let's, the whole thing is, I understand it's a conversation, but it doesn't have to get like.
I'm just saying
I don't
language,
understand.
language is.
I quite honestly don't understand what if there's something that we're trying to solve, let's talk about the thing that we're trying to solve. Try to fit it into this to make sense, because part of this is, there's obviously a concern. There's obviously a concern with council wants to gain access to department heads, and department heads need to do their work. So what's the balance in that, specifically with interference with administration? Yes, Councilman.
I want to have something cleared up tonight. I've always wondered about. There's a gray area where, and it will always be there. There's really nothing we can do about it. Just the question is how we deal with it. And that is, each of us on this council has a job to do. One job, for example, is to monitor the budget. Okay? And we cannot monitor the budget without information. We need a continuous stream of financial information in order to monitor the budget. If for some reason we are denied that, then we are unable to do our jobs successfully as council. So I would like to know how we clear up that gray area and feed the council the information, all the information they need, all the time, so that we can do our jobs. And that's been difficult at times with different mayors. Some mayors are, here's everything, take a look. Some mayors are like, I'm gonna keep all this to myself, and I don't want you messing with my employees to get anything you need. You need to come through me. I understand that, and I like it. I would not want to be an employee with 7 bosses. I would find that very difficult to do. So Mayor, in your day-to-day operations, my experience with you has been, if I ask you to let me meet with so-and-so, the answer has always been yes. But I don't ask that very often, so I'm not a good case study or sample of what really goes on in the council. I don't know. So that's just something I'd like to have cleared up. We need information. We need data to make decisions. If we don't have it, we make bad decisions. And until that flow of data is constant, steady, and reliable, then we're always going to be in a pickle in that regard. So I'd like to see us, we have a whole bunch of reports that we used to routinely get from all the department heads, and we don't get so many of those anymore. And those are the things that we need to do our jobs, to set policy, to monitor the budget, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'd like to see all of that restored as soon as possible. And, I want to know, building inspector's office. I want to know what's going on down there. We spend a lot of money in that department. Police, fire, all of them. We spend a lot of money, and we need to know what's happening with it. We need to know. We can't do our job without it.
Yeah, that's fair. And, I don't know what reports were provided by the former administration, but reports that certainly the reports that I provide have been requested by this council multiple times. I provide them, sometimes they miss, sometimes they don't. The frequency in which they are provided, I try to provide the same reports every single committee meeting for each of those committees, based on whatever department head or department showed up to that or reports to that committee. So the frequency of those reports, do you need them more than once a month? Do you want it once a week, once a day? Like, I think there certainly is a balance between having my department, or my department, I should say that, but having the department heads send out a daily report or a weekly report versus a report that is presented on a monthly basis at the committee meeting or on an every basis, every other. Good job. Oh, hey, there it is.
Still here, still here.
Yeah. Or at the council meeting or something like that, right? Like, and I said this from the beginning, if you guys make requests to meet with department heads or send questions to department heads, I have no problem with that. It's expected. And I said that to the department heads on multiple occasions. I've said that to council. I have no problem with that. But my concern is, at what point does the council, and I think this goes into this debate about this item, at what point does the council become an interference with administration versus at what point are they getting information to do their jobs? Should I expect that you're going to demand a meeting with the department head to talk about their operations? I think that's a little bit crossing the line. I think that's necessary inquiry into a particular issue. That's more of I want to meet with you to talk about operational issues and direct operations, right? Considering that we do have the monthly meeting on departments, and issues that they're facing, a lot of that stuff gets flushed out during those meetings. But it is a gray area, right? And, you know, there's a balance in there somewhere, and I feel like we're
There
still
is.
trying to find that. It's become overly contentious.
You have a very hard job. You have to appease the department heads as their leader. And you have to try to appease the council, which is sort of like herding cats because we all have our own.
Well,
Priorities,
and to be, you know, just to be transparent, and this is not, you know, for fear of offending somebody, I'm not saying this to offend anybody. The department heads, I have no problem with. They have no problem with my management style. We're working well together. It's trying to balance the demands of the council and kind of keep that layer in between the political side of the house and the executive side of the house, specifically with the department heads, because they're not part of this, right? The mayor's a different position where kind of straddles both sides, and that's understandable, right? So, you know, it certainly would be easier if we could put a particular issue on the table and say, like, what about this issue, or what about that issue? That's a little different, because then we can talk about specifics rather than generalities. And,
May I for a second, speak?
this is really for the council to get worked out. Please, if you don't mind, just let us.
All right.
Well,
You know, for example, and I'm just saying this as not a generality, but something that did actually happen. Counselor that I want to meet with this department to talk about their staffing and succession planning. I want to know what's going on with this. Right now, this has been probably 2 months into providing reports, providing what's been asked of the department and my office in terms of organizational charts and vacancies and all this other stuff. I said, no, that's appropriate. I don't think it's appropriate to make the department and sit down with a counselor to talk about things that have already been presented and something that I feel is very strongly operational. It's not legislative, it's not policy, it's not on the political side of creating laws and legislation and ordinances that are there. Now, that created some contention. The first time I said no was like, okay, well, I want Dean in the room to ask this question. Okay, fine, Dean in the room. Dean clear, outlined the same way. Now, mind you, I don't like just go off on my own. I try to confirm my understanding. And there's been multiple times when I've had to confirm my own understanding between my line as the mayor and your line as council and what our responsibilities are. A lot of that, admittedly, has been a frustration of mine because, like you said, Councilor Kelly, a lot of mayors have approached this different. A lot of mayors have said, all right, Councilor, get in there, go do that work. And I don't have that style. I like to do it with my department heads, you know, like to take that executive role from the mayor's side and not kind of delegate that off to a council. And I think that is maybe part of this contention is, well, we didn't do this last time. It was different last time. The mayor let us do these things. It's not my style. So,
I get it.
yeah, I think that is part of this. What we're trying to work out here is the difference that management style between administration. That's not my intention to say you can't do this. At some point, it's got to be like, you know, the mayor's the executive, the council's council. But where's that line? And I think that this is a lot of that, trying to work through the nuances of this language.
all right, anything else on that topic?
I mean, if this is gonna keep coming up, it's gotta get resolved. I'm not gonna keep having this argument. This is, it's. You know, I understand there's, you know, gray areas and vagueness, but, you know, I think that this is part of this right here, I believe is a large part of the growing attention. that needs to get resolved. Because it's gonna happen again if it doesn't.
So maybe we could try like another example to like, kind of go along what,
So, I mean, just from my perspective, it's a matter of time management. So if the question is gonna take away department from the daily tasks that they're working on, that's gonna be on the other side of the appropriate spectrum.
well, not for like a big like report or anything, but just for like, a simple answer to like.
So simple answer to the question, I think to me, that, I mean, that's different mayors have different styles, but that's never been an issue. That's not the issue. It's when it gets to the level of supervising and controlling the actions of those department heads or those managers. If, and I don't know how to say this lightly. If it goes too far from a mayor perspective, and this has happened in the past, the mayor has the ability to go back to the employees and department heads and say, this is how all communication goes. Because the mayor is the CEO of the employees. So if that communication breaks down, then the mayor could pull their card and then everyone's in their corner and the whole thing is dysfunctional. Because then the council can only deal with the mayor through inquiries, investigations, and contention, and department heads feel like they can't communicate with counselors, even if it's a, hey, how's it going today? It's a good day. Like a conversational kind of a throwaway conversation. So we want to go, I want to keep finding it, we're always gonna be a gray area because if we go back to our corners respectively, then it kind of all breaks down.
Well, and looking at it too, again, it does say specifically that C3(8) section 5. So it is, when it says that except, it is specifically for that. It's not for all of C3(8). So I think that's great.
I agree.
I'm sorry, say it again.
So what I'm saying is, so it doesn't cover all of C3(8). It only covers, so like more pursuant to what Dean was saying about, but I do think it might be worth at some point determining what an inquiry is and how that's something. that-
Inquiry is not defined, yeah, I don't know why it's in there.
But you know what I mean, because it's just because of
Investigation.
language where it says in the council, yada, yada, but I'm just saying it does reference specifically just the I section.
Yep.
It doesn't say the whole section, so it doesn't apply to, just the budget. Based on this language.
Look, I've seen, I'm not saying, just to clarify my own understanding of this. I've seen documents from mayors who have sent out information request forms. You want information from a department head, you gotta fill out this form. And then there's a checklist that says, you get this in 1 week, 4 weeks, 3 weeks, or never. Memos that had been sent out that said to departments, under no circumstances are you allowed to speak to council unless it comes through me first. Just make this up, I can send it out, I think I've sent it out before. But like I said, I expect you guys to ask questions, I expect you guys to reach out to department heads and say, hey, what's up with this, or what's going on with this, like, I've asked that. Same thing with department heads. I just ask that it be respectful. Be respectful of their time, be respectful of their attention. Right? That's it. If you guys reach out, I expect you guys. You guys as the council.
All right, we'll keep moving on. Covered the rest of these already in the prior discussion, but C311 does talk about the mayor's ability to veto any legislative act, but again, the council can then overrule that veto by taking certain actions. Basically reintroducing the measure and then having a straight majority can overrule it.
Wait, how does that work? Details.
So in order to do let's use a resolution as an example.
Sure.
Let's see. So you could either, so if there's a resolution that you absolutely did not want as mayor, you could either veto it on the floor as soon as it was adopted, or you could say, I defer my decision on this matter. And if you defer your decision, then you have 3 days after such meeting. Or no, within 3 days, no, within 3 days, the clerk advises you, or within 5 days of that measure, you shall either veto or approve it. And if you don't act within 5 days, it's deemed adopted. And then at that point, if it's vetoed, the council can reconsider it at a subsequent meeting within a month. And if it's four votes, then it's adopted. That was just for a resolution. And the local law is a slightly different process based on the state statute. All right, Article 4 deals with the mayor's powers and duties. And some of these topics, as I was trying to say before, are probably covered more in a need for information format as opposed to a formal investigation. So again, mayor is the CEO of the city. Mayor shall, under C43A, appoint and suspend city employees unless there's a civil service rule or a personnel rule adopted by the council. Section B, the mayor directs and supervises the administration of all departments, offices, and agencies of the city, unless otherwise provided by law. Again, that goes into the role of the mayor running the city. Mayor, under section C, attends all council meetings. Again, we talked about this initially, the mayor can't vote unless the mayor's vote is necessary to break a tie, or in some circumstances, if everyone's present, his vote is necessary to pass or defeat a measure. The mayor's vote, yep. But the mayor can participate in any discussions during the council. Section D, mayor shall see that all laws, provisions, and acts of the council are faithfully executed. The executive branch. E, budget processes, prepare and submit a budget message, budget capital program to the council, and then implement the actual budget approved by council to achieve the goals of the city. F, submit to the council and make available to the public a complete report on the finances and administrative activities of the city at the end of each fiscal year. G is what I was trying to touch on before. Make such other reports as the council may require concerning operations. So that to me was something less than investigation, but a need for information for you guys to do your work. And in that situation, the council could, as a body, could issue a resolution or motion to direct the mayor to report on X topic, and then the mayor shall make such report as was required. So again, that's what I was trying to parse out before. I know I jumped ahead, but that's something more in line with your budgeting function, or whether or not we abolish or create a new department, or make an investment, whatever the topic is. We're parsing out report versus inquiry versus investigation, but I do see some differences there. Any questions on G? Because that's actually I think relevant to the prior discussion.
No, that's pretty clear to me.
Did C or H rather, mayor shall keep the council fully advised as to the financial condition and future needs of the city. So that's goes along lines with G. You guys need to know what's occurring in order for you to do your job properly. And that's my role as well. When we go into executive sessions and we have some potential litigation topic, at least I strive to keep everyone up to speed as that issue arises, not no surprises, 6 months into the dispute. Section I, make recommendations to the council concerning the affairs of the city and facilitate the work of the council in developing policy and a 5-year plan. So that goes back to kind of the mayor participates in the 5-year plan. That is the council's role. The mayor is a member of the council, but the mayor's not gagged from participating in those council actions. The mayor participates in it. The mayor shall provide staff support services for the mayor and council. So that's basically administrative staff. Frankly, that falls on that at this point. So there's no administrative assistant for the council it's, and we have a clerk of the council, but no one, I don't think that's actually yeah, no, that's just the person who's gonna take notes. So the council itself doesn't have an administrative staff, but that's where it falls on just our other city staff. Okay, assist the council to develop long-term goals for the city and strategies to implement these goals. It's pretty generic, so it's hard to get into detail. L, encourage and provide staff support for regional intergovernmental cooperation. You know, as you said, as an example, we just last week did a lot of stuff with the town, and that's probably a good example. And promote partnerships amongst council staff and citizens in developing public policy and building a sense of community. And then just generic perform such other duties as are specified in the charter and may be required by the common council. So as you can see, the mayor has a quasi, well, certainly as a CEO type function, but there are also some ceremonial or kind of public and community oriented functions. I did highlight C4-4, Mayor Pro Tem, just to highlight the point that one member of the council, I'll use the term vice mayor, is designated as the Mayor Pro Tem. I've always interpreted this as where the mayor is absent, that Mayor Pro Tem can conduct the certain city operations. You can't make a permanent action such as firing or hiring, but you can run the day-to-day of the city in the mayor's absence. Okay, that's about it in Article 4. And then I just pulled it. I don't think we need to get into it too much. We had a brief discussion about this a few days ago, but C6-6 talks about budget amendments after adoption. And that was another topic of potential gray area when we have to do some kind of adjustment midstream after the budget's adopted. And if it turns out there's too much money in one department or within a department, there's too much money or not enough money, there's language in subsection D about transfers. And in essence, again, we don't have a perfect document to guide us, but largely these transfers take place by council resolution, but there can be some circumstances if an activity or program is explicitly within a department, the mayor can modify or can transfer funds within that department and advise the council appropriately there. So that's it as far as my citations to the charter. I didn't have anything else prepared, but are there any questions that arose as a result of that, of our discussions?
Yeah, there's some language in here. I wondered what your legal opinion was, and that goes back to page 11. Well, I'm sorry, I should say it that way. My document's page 11. C3-8, where it talks about powers and duties. It says the council shall have, but not be limited to. Why is that in there? It's right at the very beginning. C3-8, where it gives you a small paragraph about all powers and duties of the city. And then there's that one single sentence that introduces all the things. The council shall have, but not be limited to. I mean, what is your legal interpretation of that language, but not be limited to?
I use that often when I write letters where I'm going to sue for this reason, but not limited to these reasons. And it's a way to just have a further, an opportunity to supplement what you said previously. In this context, I haven't thought of that specifically, but I think it's just a catch-all to say, I don't know, frankly, yeah. I mean,
It could be like something that comes up that's a gray area that's not explicitly listed in here, but it should be an authority or a power of the council.
Or certain.
Or a duty of the council.
Sitting on a committee or something like that. Established.
that's the point.
Read-
Yeah,
read-
so I
read
guess
you-
the point of this that it's not that this isn't the whole entire world, that there can be circumstances that
And things evolve too, so, it's one of those things where if things evolve and it's like, no, this actually should be the power and duty of the council. And it's not explicitly listed in here, then, there could be a local law that changes this to include that, but it may not be included right now.
And just to make another point, which I don't, a whole other workshop, but we can modify this charter. It can be modified either by local law. Typically, the guidance that I've seen previously, if you're gonna modify the charter by local law, it should be on a discrete section or two. But if you're doing an overhaul, it should be done by charter commission, which is a whole other
Right.
long process. But this is, we've changed this once or twice. So
When was this change? When was it changed? 2015?
15, 16, yeah. 16 was done.
So if
So-
you are going to amend language in a small section or two.
Yep.
How does that get done?
By local law.
By local law?
Yep, so you make the proposed
What,
amendment.
what's the limit in terms of like what could, you know, like
To me, I
in
mean,
terms of
it's-
substance, amounts, like.
So
what-
there's certain triggers in the municipal home rule law. If you said all counts, there shall be 10 counselors, you know, the number of counselors, where we said all counselors shall, or all mayors shall receive $1 million salary every year, something that affects their salary. There's a laundry list of triggers that would say that type of change requires the voters of the city to approve it. You have to go to referendum. Certain changes though wouldn't trigger any referendum. And then there's no, you know, it's just a matter of making sure it's legal and if it makes sense to the body and the majority approves it, then yeah, it's a modified charter. If you, I don't know if the question was, if I had a magic wand, what would I change?
No, that's
That
not what I'm
would-
asking.
Okay.
I'm asking, where's the line between a resolution and a charter commission? Where's
A local law and a charter commission.
No, I mean, like, how much of it would be just local law and how much is, oh my God, we need a charter commission? I mean, that's what I'm asking.
If,
Your legal
certainly
advice.
if it's a form of, we went from a, you know, a form of government change, that would be a squarely
That's
charter
okay.
commission kind of change. There's no magic answer. It's the NICOM guidance doesn't have a bright line. But we do know there's, again, I was just saying, there's statutory requirements that certain changes do trigger a public vote. And that's municipal home rule law, section 23 and 24, just have a laundry list of what those changes are. Some are permissive referendum, meaning they're not automatically to the vote unless a certain percentage of the public files a petition to put it to the vote. And then there's others that are mandatory referendum, that the change is automatically so big, it has to be voted on by the public or by the citizens.
So local law for small changes, charter commission for something substantive and large.
Yeah.
Like changing the form of government.
Form big, yeah, again, it's no bright line. But to me, if we're trying to say we just didn't like that interference with administration, we want to further expand on what is an inquiry, what is an investigation or something, that to me could be a local law.
Thank you, Dean. I really appreciate the work tonight. You've answered a lot of questions. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, my role, my specific role, we don't have to do these publicly. I can be a resource to any guys individually. There's no interference with administration to go to my office.
To what?
To go to my office, I'm in an aisle. Because I represent city, the mayor, council, the councilor, everyone.
So we have free access to
You have
you
free access
if
to me.
if we need anything
Yes,
answered.
and if you
Right.
tell me something confidential, I'm gonna keep it confidential.
Thank you.
Public comment, if you like.
Now's your time. Public comment.
if you like.
Can I bring one up that doesn't have specifically to do with this part of the charter, but this part of the charter?
Just step up here. 'cause
Up to the mic,
Jeff
so-
won't be able to hear you.
Oh. I can save it till Thursday.
Thursday's a budget hearing. It's not a common council meeting.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. We'll fit into that.
Yeah, if you have questions about the charter, I'll
Do it.
ask it now, because we can answer them specifically about your question.
All right. I'm not making it solve the budget stuff, but I'm just wondering why we, in the charter, it says we're supposed to have a deputy chamberlain, and unless I'm mistaken, it's not in the budget to have a deputy chamberlain, and I know we haven't filled it for a while. Probably should have been filled before now. I'm guessing probably just with all the budget problems we've had over the last few years, it didn't get filled, but now, you know, a lot of positions are being contemplated in this budget, so I'm asking why, because it's in the charter to have that job, why it's not being filled.
So I don't want to get into the budgetary political discussions, but I do will
It's in the
know,
charter.
I'm going to agree with you. There's certain language, and the mayor and I were talking about this the other day. Shall versus may, and that's a huge distinction, and our charter does say the city shall have a deputy chamberlain. So
Which
it's not
means must.
discretionary.
Which means we must.
I mean, but then that goes back to, what if we don't, there's not much teeth or enforcement. I mean, there's no charter police that are gonna challenge that. I guess someone could sue us and force that, and then, you know, force get involved. I've never heard of a litigation like that, but it does say shall, and that is a mandatory language, sort of language that says may, and that's, you know, more discretionary for anybody.
Was that budgeted? I know, I remember Counselor Kelly, I remember you having that conversation last budget cycle about including a deputy chamberlain. I don't even know if that was even included in the 2021.
Would you like to hear the long sordid history of assistant chamberlains?
Not right now, but yes, maybe over.
My short answer to that is we need an assistant chamberlain. If we're going to have succession planning, we know that Mr. Marks, you know, could be, I won't say he is, but he could be planning to retire at some point. He's certainly eligible age-wise. So we need someone to back him up. We need it badly, and sooner the better.
You recall if it was budgeted in the 21 budget? I don't recall if it was.
It was not,
No, it's
it
not.
was not. And I
Because I
can,
remember you having that conversation in the series of budget meetings that you all had.
was not, and was not the year before that, I don't think.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that, and I'll tell you what it is sometime, but it's kind of a long and drawn out story. So.
And just to be clear, not really understanding that it's a shall, it's not in this budget.
It was not in the 2022 budget,
And
right?
it's not correct.
Yeah,
Right. So if,
well, you know, it should be.
Sure.
Okay, that's all.
no, I mean, like you're spot on. If we're talking about succession planning and making sure that we have people that are kind of moving up in ranks or ready to take over, that are of retirement capacity, if you will, then yeah, that's it. Luis, did you have something, you had a comment earlier, you want to provide a public comment? Okay. All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Councilor Gates, second by Councilor Bach, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, we are now adjourned.